tips for marketing ECD workshops / consulting. So just generally, how do you, I'm guessing if I rephrase that, generally, how do I market ECD workshops and consulting projects? And I'll share my advice first, and then I'm going to actually ask you, Kaylee, if you could share your story, because you've done some incredible stuff over the last few weeks, marketing yourself and what you're doing. And just intuitively taken the approach that I've taken. But my first off advice is to think less about marketing and more about creating experiences for people. And if you put the lens of how do I create experiences rather than how do I market this, you'll start to think about the problem in a slightly different way. Because if you're thinking about how to market it, that automatically becomes a comms problem or a comms opportunity. But if you think about creating experiences, it becomes an engagement opportunity. Within that, naturally, there'll be comms, but it's just a different lens on it. And so from day one, I didn't necessarily think about how could I market this, but I thought about how could I create really interesting experiences where people would come into a room, I could take them through the game, I could then take photos of it, I could give them a demo of the whole thing, I could then get testimonials, I could then post about my sessions and then invite questions based on those experiences, and then use LinkedIn or Facebook or my email list to then share that story wider. And so then I thought, oh, how do we create interesting little half an hour or 60-minute or 2-hour experiences for a group of, I want to use the word disconnected, not disconnected in the sense that they don't work together, and then use that to leverage my marketing from, or our marketing from. And Katie, you've talked about using the game with, are you carrying the cards with you, sometimes using the icebreaker at the start of a meeting? Yeah, so I think somebody, did you say, Donna, you, apart from the coffee idea, or somebody else asked that question about the coffee idea? Certainly carrying the cards around is an experience in itself, because if you bump into somebody and you ask how they're going, or they say they've got a challenge with the team, you can go, hey, I found this game, would you like to see it? And you sit down and play it with them and do the weekly retro, and it takes 10 minutes. That in itself is an experience. It is a marketing exercise. If you're social media inclined, then you take a photo of that and post about that, not necessarily meaning that anybody gets identified, but it just becomes another touch point, another chance to practice using the game for one, but another experience that you can use to tell people about. Because then the next person you bump into, you tell them a story about how you bumped into somebody and you used the game for 5 minutes and it led to this. So all of a sudden the stories are coming from the experiences you're creating. Yeah. So that's certainly the mindset I've taken to the marketing of it. There's a messaging aspect to this, obviously. Big picture, like at its most high level, like the pointiest part of whatever pyramid or anything, any structure you're thinking of, is that I tend to start talking about the game being a completely new or innovative way to focus on the culture of your team. Like that's my sort of, it's a very poor elevator pitch, and I've got far more beautiful ones crafted on our website, but it just seems to be the one I can say the easiest. So I've got this new and innovative game that we can help you to focus on the culture of your team. And if that leader is an early adopter or somebody's interested in you and interesting things, or is curious, you'll automatically get a connection. And if they're not, I tend not to spend any time convincing those people, because my whole belief is built around, let's find the people who believe what we believe and help do amazing things for those people. And because I spent a lot of time in the first 2 years trying to convince people that this mattered, convincing people who didn't really care so much, and I felt it's my job to convince them. And then I realized about 2 years in that was taking up a lot of time, energy, space. Also, there was a lot of rejection in that as well, which was obviously tough to manage a lot. And I stopped focusing on those people and started looking for cues when people leaned into the conversation, and then working with those people. But big picture, I talk about this being a completely new and innovative way to explore the culture of your team. But I also talk about how there's 12 different ways to use the game. So from a marketing perspective, I think that's really crucial on one hand, because that then one shows the breadth of use of it. And in the course, I think when I shot the masterclass footage, there might've been 9 ways, but there's now probably 12. There's actually a few more than this, but I feel as if I give people more than 12, that will even overwhelm them even more. Yeah. But why I think this is important is that from a sales and marketing perspective is if you know the pain point of the person you're dealing with, you can then structure the conversation around that. So if you know that the leader or the company has got a pain point around how they develop leaders, then the way I position the conversation or the messaging I use is how this game can be used to develop more caring and empathetic leaders. Or if employee engagement is an issue or a challenge, then the 12 monthly employee engagement survey is not going to be fixing anything, and it's only rear view mirror anyway. And I talk about how this game is a different way of engaging our employees and understanding their motivations, drivers, fears, what they want in their workplace. If a team is going through change, then I'll talk about how this game can be used to help teams navigate change and uncertainty. So I'll find the pain point through the conversation over a coffee or email, whatever it is, and then position the tool based on that, because it can be used in all these different ways. So that's sort of more of a 101 type sales philosophy, I guess, where you find the pain point and then suggest the solution based on what that pain point is. But what's the final thing here when it comes to the marketing and the tips for the consulting? And Lottie talked about this actually last week. There's a difference between free and giving your stuff away for free and not getting anything in return. No value exchange. Often when we talk about free, we're worried that it's only a one-way value exchange. But I'm a huge believer in creating small experiences that don't cost anything or are free in return for testimonials or for reviews, because one, I get better and I get to improve, but two, I can share the story. And so creating free experiences for people to come and learn about the game is really important. One, it shows our generosity, and I truly believe in reciprocation, and people will reciprocate. Not everybody, but on the whole, people will. But two, I really believe in this abundance model, that there's enough for everybody. And if we work together and we show our generosity and share, then we'll all get better rather than just being really exclusive and creating too much scarcity. So creating interesting and free experiences to bring people into the room to think about how you market it is really key. Yeah. But then I think it equally applies for internal audiences. So Edna, where you are with you're marketing it to an internal audience, right? It's not an external person, so to speak. And I think you follow the same approach. Think about how you can create experiences for some people inside the organization, where you invite 6 or 7 leaders to come along and you showcase and demo the game to them. And you only need one of those leaders to go away and say, I want to try it with my team. And you get one team doing it, and then all of a sudden another team. I've seen this happen in government agencies here in Wellington. One team does it. Funnily enough, then the finance team saw it and they wanted to do it. And you think, well, the finance team wouldn't be the second group of people to do this, to go through this game, normally speaking, in organizations, just if you stereotype finance people, which often happens, unfortunately. And then somebody else will want to do it. So creating experiences internally is equally as important as creating experiences externally if you're a consultant or coach, I think. Follow the same approach. I would anyway. Yeah, nice. And it will, and it did take me a long time, and it will take you time. That's all relative. It'll take you less time than I've done. I've got 5 years of experiences to share, so you'll be a bit quicker through it than I have. But two things with that. I think the time that you're going through is really important, because you're learning. I'm assuming you're learning a lot as you're doing this. So I'm assuming there's going to be massive learnings in that. So from a framing perspective, from a mindset perspective, I think pull those bits out of it, because they're really important. Practicing the framing up of it. I love that you used the word thing and feeling. That I do as well. Sometimes I struggle to describe it as more than a thing. Like, I've got this thing. I've started to use game a bit more than thing, but certainly I find myself typing in emails thing a lot, because I'm like, I still struggle to figure out a way to describe it more than a thing or a game, a tool, resource. There's different ways, but yeah, I love the approach you're taking there. You've got the constraint of not being able to meet face to face. Using that screen and screen sharing is really cool, really simple. But yeah, finally, Donna, just to wrap that up, having a pack of cards in your bag or your handbag or your car at all times, you'll be surprised by how often you might get them out and go, hey, should we just have a quick play? Because playing with it for 5 minutes is worth about half an hour of explanation, I've found, give or take. Yeah.